Hello, welcome to Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you like this video, please push like and share it with your friends, families, neighbors, enemies, etc. I added one tier to the memberships, and that's specifically for the live stream. So like my goal is going to be to have 2 live streams probably on Thursday night, the second Thursday night and the fourth Thursday night of every month. And during those live streams, there'll be people that are those membership levels only. But that's not to say that I'm not going to have free ones or whatever you want to say. So that's just, and it's $4.99 is what I put it. I had 2 more tiers. I'm waiting for just a second. Here we go, thunder. And every fly in the nice. Okay. So, here's what I want to say. Days like this, well, that's not true. Days with the rainy feel, but it's humid out here right now, okay? So it's like in the 70s. Got massive storms coming through. But days like this remind me of cocaine. This is what I'm talking about. I grew up during the cocaine 80s. Cocaine was a very big part of my life as a child, sadly. In my teenage years, early 20s. And I grew up in Southern California, and it didn't rain that much for a long time in LA. I don't know what it's like right now, but every time it did, all the construction workers, docks worked, but the construction workers for sure, they were all off work, and it was all about coking up on those days. It was about drinking booze and coking up on days like this. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but this is reminiscent of that. And this made me think today, because I thought about this just an hour ago, about people that dealt drugs back in the 80s and 90s. And anybody that's been a part of that scene, of that life, there's always a dealer or two. So if you're from the city, there's more than one. But if you're from places like Fort Smith, Arkansas, there's less than a handful of names that really stand out to people as far as being big dope boys. And I'm going back to the 90s on this one, okay? I went to my criminal life, or my life of being somebody who was in and out of prison started very early. I got busted when I was 15, again right after I turned 18, and went to California. Then I moved to Arkansas running from a California sentence, a 4-year sentence. Then I was out here a year and I got busted again. Then I did time in Arkansas. California caught up with me. Then I was back in the Arkansas system on a violation. I'm trying to think what else. Two violations, I guess you'd have to say. No, it was a violation, a new charge for a possession, I think it was, and then of course in '97 I went down on my big case, which I got life. 1995, actually it was November of 1994. I was arrested leaving my child's daycare. They found a substance believed to be a 1/4 gram of methamphetamine. I had nothing to do with it. I'm being serious. It was my ex-wife's boyfriend or somebody. They just wanted to get me locked back up. I sat in jail on a violation I was innocent of. During that time is when I really started jailing in the Sebastian County Detention Center. I had an Arkansas a violation from state prison, but I did it in the county because of the overcrowding. During that time, I started hearing a name. And I just remembered his name minutes before I did this video, his full name. And I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go by his nickname, and that guy's name was Big Frank. So 1995, I'm in the jail from November, I want to say, until April. It was actually April the 13th, 1995, I got out. And this name kept popping up all over the place. Big Frank, big coke dealer, huge coke dealer out of Fort Smith / Spiro. This is Oklahoma, so I'm on the Arkansas-Oklahoma line. I'm talking 30 miles above where I'm at right now. I'm right on Oklahoma's right there. I'm pointing to it. So there's a line that goes straight up, pretty much a straight line goes right into Fort Smith. On both sides, you got Arcoma, which is Arkansas, Oklahoma, the line right there. Well, Poto's a ways away. Anyway, the guy, Big Frank, he lived on the Oklahoma line. I'm not sure if he was from Fort Smith, but what I heard back then was that there was a guy, and I'm not sure if this was when I came back or not, but there was a kid, 18, 19 years old, by the name of Rodney Gist. Rodney Gist, I believe it's fair to say, was a crack cocaine user, one of Big Frank's guys, or somebody Big Frank can turn to and ask him to go take out somebody for him. Rodney Gist goes in, I think it was a 22 or a 9mm, and goes and shoots this other guy. So gets an attempted murder charge. I want to add here that Rodney Gist and his friend Little Eddie, and then 3 others, knocked me out in 1997 3 times, and I got up each time. Anyway, that's a whole different story. I've done videos about that. No hard feelings, but I'll give him his props on that. So Rodney is. So I found out in 90, and I think this happened in 1995. I want to say, I could be wrong. Okay, but when I came back in 97, there was a kid in a wheelchair, and this was the guy that was the victim of this case. And it was the first time I heard that Big Frank was going to be testifying during this trial. And I believe it was against Rodney, saying basically, I didn't give this dude permission to go shoot this guy, or whatever the defense was using, okay? I'm not trying to insinuate he was a rat or informant at this point, okay? And I'm not trying to say that's what he was. So what ends up happening here is, in 97, like I said, I go down, me and Rodney, that incident happened, I think it was October or December. It was October when I got jumped in the jail. And Rodney goes to trial shortly thereafter. Actually, he got out, I think on a technicality, ran down to Forest City area, I believe, and they got him back, and I think they got hit with an escape on that. I'm not sure. But anyway, the name of the jail in 97 as well. I had a big case. I was facing mandatory life. I was not a dealer in these parts. I'm not going to say that none of the drugs that I sold didn't go to this area, the Sebastian County area, because it did. But I was not on the street level, or my name wasn't out there in Fort Smith or this area. The drugs that I was getting were going to Missouri, Central Arkansas, West Memphis area, Louisiana area, and some Oklahoma. And there was a guy here that brought his stuff to Oklahoma that I didn't know. So there was a couple people local, but the names you would hear about drug dealers would be guys from Fort Smith, or that frequented Fort Smith, and Big Frank was the name. So everybody in the jail's talking about that. I mean, this dude was in the spotlight. There was talk about indictments coming down for him, this and that, but I never met him. I do know he did a couple bids in Arkansas. I think we missed each other, but he wouldn't have known me anyway. Big Frank, he was a chubby, happy-looking guy. But anyway, so here's what goes down. I get sentenced. I get sentenced to life in prison. While I was in the county jail before I left, by the way, I met a guy by the name of Steve Robinson from Fort Smith. I think he's dead now. Robinson was a spoiled 50-year-old rich guy. His mom was the first real estate developer in Fort Smith, Mary Robinson. He lived with her. They lived in a really exclusive part at the time in Fiena Hills. It was nice. I shouldn't say exclusive. And he was also dealing marijuana, and him and his mom got in a fight, and he asked somebody if he wanted to kill his mom. So Frank was in there. I met him for conspiracy to commit murder on his mother, okay? He gets out, gets 10 years for that, suspended, goes to rehab. Yeah, money does wonders, right? Goes to rehab for that, and they had him on tape, by the way, and he was serious. Chop her up with the chainsaw. Yeah, so he was a little out of his mind on dope. But I'm now in Leavenworth. Let's skip to 1998, 1999. I'm in Leavenworth. I'm calling people. You know, I was still active on the phone to people, and I was using the phone a lot to people and players on the street, whatever. So Frank tells me, hey, you hear Big Frank got popped? And I'm like, no. And he says, no, he's going into the feds. He got 11 years. I said, 11 years? Dude's got 2 prior drug convictions, right? He said, yeah, he got Ron Fields as the attorney. Now, let me tell you something. If you're from Sebastian County, Arkansas, you know who Ron Fields is. Ron Fields was a prosecuting attorney, I want to say, for about 20 years. He has a law firm up in Fort Smith right now. They are a powerhouse. He was in the DEA. I think he was under Asa Hutchinson, the second man. He was the acting Arkansas Attorney General for a while. This guy's got big political connections. No disrespect to Ron Fields. I don't want no problems. So, but Ron Fields prosecuted me. Notorious for being crooked. Okay, notorious for taking payoffs back in the day. He was charged with sexually molesting his stepdaughter, beat that case. Well-known cocaine user. And I'm going to say this, when I was brought in for questioning, when I got busted in Fort Smith on the interstate, they brought me to the narcotics office, and I saw a man who I recognized on the news come out of the back doing that. And his nose was whistling like mine, kind of. And it was the prosecutor. So he ends up going into private practice after a while. By the way, for what I just said, the man was also a really, really good litigator and is a good litigator. So if you've got money, it was back in the day, Christian, Sexton, and Ron Fields were the names to get in this part. If you had money. I had Eddie Christian, but then I had 5-6 attorneys at one point. So anyway, I heard that it gets Ron Fields. So this is a guy who's been prosecuted by Ron Fields, who then goes and gets Ron Fields to represent, and that's not illegal, by the way. I believe Frank's indictment was out of Oklahoma, right on the other side of the line, rather than in Arkansas. Okay. With 2 prior drug convictions, the prosecutor would have the discretion whether to file an enhancement, meaning that the 10-year mandatory minimum was for somebody with no prior drug convictions. Now, if anybody got a sentence under like 17 years and they had some priors, that was a very big red flag for the person being hot. So let me go back. I'm on the phone with Steve. Steve tells me this, so we're kind of laughing. This dude, Big Frank, must be a rat. This is what we're telling ourselves. Lo and behold, a dude pops up. They say he's from, they're calling him Arkansas, okay? So a lot of times, Arkansas, they had some people at Leavenworth. It wasn't a big car, but I heard him calling Arkansas. And I said, where are you from? And he said, Fort Smith. I said, Fort Smith? He said, yeah. And I said, what's your name? And he said, they call me Big Frank. And I said, Big Frank? I said, dude, Rodney Gist, I've been hearing about you for years. I can't believe you just got here. So he heard that there was a white dude that got a life sentence for meth, okay? Again, they caught me for meth. They charged me with meth. I sold more coke than meth, more marijuana than coke, okay? But they hit me with the meth conspiracy nevertheless. So Frank, he's black, I'm white, okay? So we're not kicking it by no means, but we're talking in passing. Frank hits the poker tables. Everybody's got a vice in prison pretty much. I like blackjack and drugs and alcohol, but Frank was big on the poker table. Now, this is what I'm going to say. There's a big difference between big ballers up in Fort Smith and big ballers in California and other big cities. Frank was on the level of probably getting a half kilo to a kilo at a time, maybe a couple. Not much bigger than that, but nevertheless, he was the big guy up in Fort Smith. In federal prison, he was a little guy, okay? I was getting, a kilo up to 5 pounds of meth, 100 pounds of pot. So in the federal scheme, I made almost $1 million in 7 months. So in the federal scheme, I guess I kind of fit in, but nothing like a lot of the big drug dealers up there, okay? The money I had was I had family and friends that took care of me too. Plus I was hustling and I had some money when I first went in. Frank was he didn't go on the big boy poker tables. He stayed on little boy poker tables. Every time I saw this dude, he was a nice guy, by the way. Not nice. I mean, you would never think this dude was some ruthless drug dealers they made this dude out to be. Super nice guy. But I had never been around somebody that would openly say, I can't do this time. Man, something's got to break. I can't do this time, man. I can't do 10 years. So he had 11 off 11. He was going to do about 9 and some change. I've got a life sentence and I'm listening to this dude snivel. And I just kept looking at him thinking, this dude's going back to court, dude. This dude's going back to court. This meaning to testify against people to get a time cut. I seen his world crumble, meaning, you know, he had a poker table habit, and compared to other dudes in the feds that came in as drug dealers, there was a lot of guys that got caught in the feds for small amounts of drugs that weren't claiming. This dude is a big name out of Fort Smith, so he should be up there with the big dogs as far as playing. I seen him like basically run out of money, which that happens, especially when you gamble. And then all of a sudden one day, I got these black dudes knocking on my door from the South, the dirty South, saying, hey man, you seen Big Frank? They didn't say it that way. They said N-word from Arkansas. Okay. And I'm like, no man, he owes me money, and they say he checked in. That's going to protective custody. He didn't go into protective custody. He went back to court, I believe. They snatched him up out of there. But he owed a bunch of money when he caught out. You know, for half a second, because I was pretty new myself. Matter of fact, this was probably the beginning. I want to say the beginning of '99, because I remember the cell that I was in. I was in 111 when he got there, so I was there the first year. So this is my first year. If I recall, these dudes half-assed were pressing up on me to pay this dude's debt, and I'm like, dude, I'm white. What are you talking about? I'm not going to play it back, dude's debt, just because he's from Arkansas. We didn't kick it on the street. Yeah, I knew some of his people, but I did know some of his people. But anyway, the moral of the story is, I was just thinking about the big name drug dealers in the cocaine game back in the day, okay? That's what this all comes down to. And I guess this falls into line with the same thing as some of the mob guys that people believe go to prison and are something that they're not. Not all of them, okay? Matter of fact, be watching out for my series coming up pretty soon called The Podfather. The Podfather. I'm going to do it in shorts. The Podfather series. So not all of them, but a lot of guys believe that these people on the streets, that there's these big names, such as Big Frank. Big Frank's a monster. Big Frank's got all the money. He's got a white Cadillac. I don't know. Got a white Cadillac, got a girl, got his babe. He has the biggest parties over in Spyro, I think he had his party. I mean, this dude was, famous, infamous. People love this dude, you know? They did. And I believe in the state system, he drew commissary every day. Every week. I think it was $40 at the time. You know, so in the state system, he was the guy too. In the federal system, he was the little boy out of his league, out of his element, that was crying about doing time. But this is not to go ahead and put this dude down. This is not what this was about. I liked Frank. I did. I do not have information that says he went back to court and was an informant. Being a jailhouse lawyer who did get myself out of prison, I can tell you it's highly unlikely for a guy like that to get 11 years and not cooperate and go back to court and not cooperate. But I'm not putting that jacket on that dude. Big Frank, one of Fort Smith's bigger drug dealers back in the day. And I'm sure there's people that are huge that nobody ever hears about, you know, but this was a guy on the streets that was doing his thing. And the feds chewed him up and spit him out. But nevertheless, I liked him. Take care.